Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
Good.
Thanks for taking time to chat today.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
No worries. I'm John from Make Math Moments. Fill me in. What's going on in
Yeah.
math in your great state of Kentucky and Jefferson County? All that stuff. Tell me what's up?
Yeah, so this is we're a really, really big county. But I am a math resource teacher, like a math coach at one school. It's middle school. This is my first year in the role. We have we have 8 math teachers and 3, like, we call it ECE, but like kids with IEPs or like learning disability teachers who kind of help. And we use the curriculum Illustrative Math. Are you familiar? Yep. Yeah. It's great curriculum. We're getting past the point where like we're implementing it pretty well. Like there's not a whole lot of teacher pushback as far as like using the curriculum. It's more of like using it, like they're still kind of doing direct instruction with the curriculum.
Right. Yeah.
So it's kind of like you could give them any book and they're going to teach it the same.
Exactly.
And not really the way the curriculum, it has all of the like turn and talk with your partner and productive struggle and like, all of those good things. But we're just kind of struggling getting teachers to really implement that, I guess.
Right. So basically the way I imagine it, and you're not alone in this, in implementing a curriculum like illustrative math. So probably what's happening is like we're using it as a pacing guide. And hey, on this day it says to do this, and I read through it, but then I'm like, I'm gonna just teach it the way I would have taught it with whatever other the curriculum was. I'm just following the order that's out laid out. Sound right?
Yes, yeah, pretty much.
We ask everybody on the podcast the same question, which is, what is your math moment? So if I say like math moment, there's always like this thing that pops in our minds, and we have this image or this memory that sticks with us all this time. So if I said, what's your math moment? What has stuck with you all these years as a focal point around mathematics education?
Well, it's funny because it's actually more like physics. My high school physics teacher, which is a lot of math also, but he would always make all the formulas and stuff. We would throw watermelon off of the bleachers and then we would calculate, use the two, starting point and ending point in time and calculate, the gravity and stuff like that. That was kind of, I always wanted to be a teacher, but that was the moment where I was like, that's the kind of teacher I want to be, is like the one throwing watermelons off the bleachers and, the ones going outside and running and have it show them that it's a linear function, that kind of thing. So I would say as a student, it was my math moment, but also kind of helped shape my teaching as well.
And that translated, like that was some of the ways you taught when you taught math?
Yeah, that's because I taught 8th grade for a really long time. 10 years. That's not probably really long to everybody, but 10 years of 8th grade. And it's a lot of linear functions. So we would go outside and run and like we would walk and then run and compare the slopes and like, do that kind of stuff. So I kind of contribute that to my high school physics teacher.
Amazing. It is amazing how impactful our rules are, right? Like that stuck with you all these years. It was just because you saw what that teacher was doing and you're like, I totally am on board with how this teacher is teaching and you remember it. Because I bet you right now, if you think back to other grade levels that you were in, you were like, I don't even remember how that class went. Right. So it's like, but it was like, clearly it wasn't an impactful year for you in mathematics education.
Right. Yeah. Because I jumped all the way to senior year of high school.
Right. Awesome. Yeah. Is there a vision or goals for the school or the school district right now around mathematics and specifically this curriculum implementation?
Yeah, the whole district adopted it, and we've passed a law in Kentucky saying that if the district adopts it, we pretty much like have to follow it, which is fine. And like I said, it's a good curriculum, but our goal as a school is more based off of like test score at the end of the year. But that's kind of like our holistic like department goal. But then within that, we've said like through using the math language routines in the curriculum. And so more like locally as a school, our goal is to get more student to student conversations and like less teacher talk. we're more the facilitators guiding them, but the kids are doing all the work and thinking.
Right. Right. That's a very good goal to have. It's actually, really, really great that the school has identified that as a kind of a mini goal inside of the bigger kind of typical goals most schools or school districts will create.
Right.
How are you measuring, basically, how do you know you hit this goal?
Right. So I think that's kind of where we're at. We have learning walk is what we call it, where me and another resource teacher and some admin kind of go in and fill out forms and provide feedback. We also have our PLC. I'm assuming you have all the same letters, but I don't know. But our document has where the teachers put how they're going to put student to student discourse and plan for that. But as far as actual data, we don't really have any specific. At one point I went in and kind of just did tally marks of how many times students talk versus teachers and shared that. But it was more informally. And that was just once, it wasn't all the time.
Right. So you're saying we have some things in place that we could make use of, but really what we don't have is a clear target that we know we're working towards. We just generally think I'm going to feel that we're on the right. We had impact this year, instead of saying here's a piece of data or evidence that says we were here. Now we're here and we hit the goal we set at the beginning of the year, or we're closer or we're way far apart.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
More arbitrary.
Right. Right. And now I guess the question I ask most people on calls like this is what do you feel would be a success by the end of the year?
I would like teachers to really dive in and use the curriculum and those language routines and the instructional routines. And I mean, really just let's try them, get used to them, make them more of a habit or routine, rather than just they're going to do it because they know someone's coming in to watch, or they're going to kind of try to do it. But I really want them to dive in because when they do it, the kids do respond. It's not they do it and then it's terrible. I think it's just a lot of stuck in what we've always kind of done and what their comfortability is. And now in January, we're halfway through the year. It's the kids are kind of just waiting for the teacher to just tell them the answer instead of figuring it out. And there's pockets of kids trying and pockets of classes that will, but we would just kind of want it to be more streamlined and more of what's happening for the majority of the group and not so much pockets, you know?
Right. Right. So I think you've got a sense of what you want to do by the end of the year. So the question is, how will you know you got there?
Right. I definitely want to do some sort of we're obviously math people. So I like the data of it. And that kind of speaks to us. We have is your learning goal posted and have you referred to it? And at the beginning of the year, it was kind of low, but now that's kind of data showing we went from, 60% to now it's 95%. And for math teachers, especially, that clicks with them. And so now they're more likely to do it because they can kind of see that growth. But I think sometimes the student to student is a little harder to it's not always a yes or no, they did it or didn't do it.
Right.
So sometimes they're working on problems 1 through 5 with the partners, what the teacher says, but really this kid's doing 1 and 2, this kid's doing 3 and 4, and then it's a copy thing. So they're not really talking together, you know.
We're up to get the work done as quickly as possible.
Yes, which is efficient and I love it, but not quite the point, you know.
Right.
So I definitely that's kind of they might think that the kids are talking and that counts, but in my eyes, that's not quite what we're looking for.
Right. Right. And sometimes that's the problem with, let's say, some measurables that we typically think about is a lot of times when we think about designing some sort of system to tell us we got to a goal, we think quantitatively. We think we have to count the number of times someone has put the learning goal on the wall, which is not the actual indication of whether that learning goal is being useful. Because I think, what we would all argue is that if we're counting a learning goal target, is it that we're using the learning goals to streamline learning, facilitate learning, use feedback within those learning goals, and students understand where they are on, say, a certain trajectory of a strand or a unit, and can see, the tie what they're learning to what that particular learning goal is, and self-assess. These are the bigger things I think about learning goals that get misdiagnosed when we say start counting, and it just becomes routine to just do it without thinking about it. So same is true about, let's say, a discourse routine in our classroom. If we're going to measure it by counting, what you're telling teachers is the quantity matters, not the quality.
Right. And
they start to do the exact same thing, is to say, okay, well, I did 2, discussions or 2 different things, but they'll count what you just said as a discourse routine when it is not a discourse routine, because they don't either know what a discourse routine is, or they're just focused on the quantity and saying, I checked it off my list. Yeah. So the districts, I think that when we work with developing measurement techniques and measurement tools to tell us we're getting closer to goals, like, having a discourse in our classrooms, is what you want to do is you want to capture the change, but then describe the change. Okay. So you have to kind of define that change. So it's like, where are we now on discourse, and where do I want to be? And usually when we think of it that way, instead of quantitatively, we think qualitatively, and we start to go, what does it look like we're doing? Like, what are teachers doing in a routine like that? And what are students doing in a routine like that? And usually that unfolds a rubric or, a scaling system that we can start to see the moves or the implementation of what does it look like if I'm implementing, I'm beginning to implement a routine. What does it look like if I'm implementing my routine at a high level? So very descriptive words where we're saying, this is what it is, and this is what it isn't. Right. So that nice rubric that we could be using in our PLCs, in our coaching, in our staff meetings to kind of describe what we're after. Teachers see it, coaches have it, administrators have it. It gives everyone a clear picture of like what change we're after. And when you can use that in those say professional development interactions, it not only helps measure where we are, but it tells teachers where we're going, right? So you're saying, like, it's not about counting. It's like, we're trying to get from here to here, and maybe you're already here, which means maybe I don't have to come back because you're regularly implementing at this high level, which is defined on this scale, and you can see the words that describe the interactions. Okay. So that would be like an important kind of measurement tool to kind of help not only measure where you want to go, because then what you can do is you can define where, and you need a baseline to capture that change, right? So you need, if like, let's say right now you're like, I'm going to go after this call, I'm going to build this look for document. And then I'm going to, next time I'm in a classroom, I'm going to maybe have the teacher self-assess, or I'm going to self-assess where they feel like they are on this particular routine. And then now you have this baseline to say where we are. And then you can start defining where you want to get to by the end of the year. So it's like this, and it's going to be, most times if you do it because you're in a school and you have, how many teachers? I think you said like 8. Yeah. So it's like now it's almost like you have a classroom, you have 8 students, and you've got a grading system, and you've got a learning target. And now you can kind of monitor their progress on this tool throughout the rest of the year to go, you were here at the start of this cycle, and we're going to put things into place, which is then what you have to figure out was, what are we going to do to move the needle if this is where we are and this is where we want to go? So then at the end, then you can say, okay, by June or by May or whatever your school year ends. Yeah. And you could say, I can sense that most of my teachers are implementing at a level 2 here. Okay. And it's defined 2 is the look, teachers are doing this, students are doing this. And then now it's like, I would really love it if we could move everybody up 1 category. Okay. Right. And then you can say, okay, now here's where the average is going to be if we move everybody up 1 level in implementation. So we're not maybe defining that we're moving from wherever they are up to 4 by the end of the year. We're just saying 1 step. And that might be just something you define as your success. You just have to define, what is my success and what am I happy with? So sometimes a question we say is like, imagine you fast forward to the end of the year. If you got this level, or this success, would you be like, yes, we did some really impactful work this year? And then you also have a piece of evidence that says, during this year, we moved teachers from this implementation level on this routine to this level on this routine. And here is my support. Here's my piece of evidence. Here's my document that says we've done this. And then what it tells you too, when you get to the end of the year, when you have that success, you're like, let's do more. Let's move them up another category. And then you don't flip flop, because what happens usually, right, is if you don't have that measurement tool, you're going to get to the end of the year and you're going to still go, I think we did something good. Yeah. I saw some like changes, but I can't articulate exactly which ones.
Right.
And then you're like, let's try something new. And then you switch focuses, or you try a new technique, or you make a new goal, and then the other goal gets thrown away. And teachers are like, what about that goal? Was that goal important? I think that goal was important. And they start to learn that whatever goal is there.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that helps a lot, actually.
All right. What are your thoughts moving forward? What do you feel like is the next step for you specifically?
I definitely want to like create like the rubric you talked about, in like the low to high. Like, we do a lot of rubrics like in class, so that makes sense for like me to kind of have one for like math teachers, and like just one on student discourse. And because I think in our head we have like so many things we want to work on, and so many things on like our walkthrough data sheet that kind of gets a little bogged down. So I like
sometimes those walkthroughs are checklists, and it's not good enough, because the other thing you can do, use that same rubric with your administrator. And when you do those walkthroughs, you're teaching them what it looks like, what it sounds like, what does it look like what teachers are doing? What does it look like what students are doing? So that they also get a good sense of like, because when they go into classrooms and they just see what's there, they might not see like, is that good? I don't know. I don't have any descriptors that say what is good and what isn't good.
Right. Yeah. No, that helps a lot, actually.
I was going to point you to, so like principles to action, which is 8 effective teaching. So if you look in there, each of the principles to action. So each one I don't know if it's at the end of the chapter or not. Like, I'm just looking on page like 56. 56 is on effective. Which one is it? Illicit and use of student thinking. Well, I think it's at the end of each section. They have a little, it's not a full rubric, but you'll get the sense of like what it's saying, because it'll say if you're using, you're eliciting and using evidence of student thinking. This is what it looks like you're doing well on when you're using what teachers are doing and what students are doing. So that's some helpful guides, which can help you unpack maybe what a level, like what does it look like when we're not doing that well? So the opposite, or what does it currently look like in our classrooms, and describing that in the same way, so that you're showing them behaviors or interactions that we're like, these are things that you are doing, or this is like what a level 1 implementation of doing this is, 2, 3, 4. And you can build out your rubric a little bit deeper than that. So that's a good resource. And if you have it handy, then you can build upon that.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, thank you. That actually helps me, because I was kind of thinking like what even it would look like. So that kind of helps me understand like I don't know what the teacher's doing and like versus students doing, but like what is a low level versus like high level is where I'm going to have to like kind of sit down and think about like what we want to see versus maybe what we're seeing in the middle steps is kind of always the hard part.
That is the hard part. And and here's the thing you could do too, is if you have time with these 8 teachers, right? So if you on a staff meeting day, or a department meeting or a school meeting, if you can get these teachers together, you can build this with them.
Yeah.
Right. So you're doing a little bit of embedded PD when you do that, and bringing them into the fold to go, getting a sense of what they think it looks like when you're using this particular thing looks good. Mm-hmm. And then you can start educating them on what it could look like. And it might involve some modeling. It might involve, let's look at this example where one of us has been doing this well, and then defining what we see, what we don't see. And using it to kind of like in one of our districts did it this way, and kind of like used it that way with their, I think it was a particular grade band because it was across a district. They used it that way to develop the rubric in say the first 6 months, and then used it in the second half of the year to implement it with their teachers. But the teachers, because they were part of the process of developing it, they almost knew what we were working towards by the time they got to say it being assessed on it.
Right. And there's more buy-in because you can't say I don't agree with it. Yeah, you already had your say.
Exactly.
All right. I like that.
Awesome. Okay. So Is there anything else you want to chat about? I feel like you got a good handle on what's to do next.
Yeah, no, thank you. You gave me like some things I can start awesome. Immediately. So I appreciate that.
No worries. No worries. What would you say is a big takeaway like from today's call?
Definitely like as the math like coach, having my own like rubric like I would in my classroom was my big takeaway. Like awesome. We have like data collection, but as a rubric, like a 1 through 4 scale is something I hadn't really thought of. So I appreciate that.
Hey, no worries. No worries. We're always here to help and provide some suggestions too. Okay, Carrie, thanks so much for joining. And if there's anything else that we can do, while you're on your journey to supporting these teachers in your school, let us know.
All right. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No problem. Take care.
Bye.